we need to actually, we very much need to talk about this
regard
to messaging and branding for a product-focused company like all early-stage startups are. I don't know, drive into the future.
Oh my God. Did you just look that up? Because I think that you are cheating.
Hello, and welcome to the Misadventures in Marketing podcast, brought to you by the American Marketing Association San Francisco. I'm Steve Haney, a fractional CMO in Silicon Valley.
And I'm Peter Farago, a startup marketer in the Bay Area. Steve and I come together each week to discuss high-tech topics in the world of marketing in Silicon Valley.
We'll be sharing our own experiences running marketing teams with a special focus on technology startups, our successes, our failures, what worked and what didn't. We'll also be inviting our CMO friends and other marketing colleagues onto the show every once in a while, and hopefully impart some wisdom along the way. All right, Peter, what's happening?
Right. What's happening? Well, what's happening today is we got a pretty cool topic. We're going to be talking about messaging in marketing.
Favorites. Yep.
You know, the cool title of this podcast is Why Aren't You Getting the Message? But what we're talking about, the angle we're taking, Steve, and we've both been through it, I think, many times, is more of the behind the scenes work to get the positioning, the vision, the branding, the tone, all the things that come together that give companies a point of view, a personality, a way we showcase and talk about our advantages. And typically it spans across more than just text. It's a visual design language. It's, you know, in concert with creative directors and others. But basically it's everything that embodies what our brand should stand for and the perceptions we're trying to build among our current and prospective customers. And it's always vis-a-vis alternatives that they can consider. So that's the idea. Some people, I believe, and I'll let you explain this, I do definitely a version of this, and I'm actually kind of in the middle of doing a lightweight version of this now, but some people call the collection of all these things a messaging house. Do they not, Steve? You've done actual proper messaging houses, right?
Yes. Usually my suite of things I produce is a messaging house. Usually for an early stage startup where there's only one or two products, I do a product positioning document. And then if you've really got the luxury to do it and you're in a larger company, you do a brand book, which incorporates the visual identity as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, if you don't mind, like I'm in a startup now, and the reason I think you do kind of a product positioning, say, statement or document, as opposed to the full buffet, is because usually at a smaller company, the company is really just one product.
Right.
And so
the name of the product is often the name of the company.
Yeah. And so therefore, if it's a Venn diagram, the overlap is very heavy between what you might call the corporate marketing, corporate positioning, or the brand versus the product positioning. But tell us a little bit about, because I think here I have a feel for the language and I play around with it, and I've written many fancy documents, but I believe as an English major, for example, and someone who also cares about the language, you have more of a structured approach, I think, than I do. So I'd love to hear what you think is necessary to have in a really good positioning document.
This episode of Misadventures in Marketing is brought to you by Section, the leading online business school for the age of AI. Every ambitious person deserves a great strategic education. People who want to be great at their jobs now, not on someone else's schedule. That's where Section comes in. Section gives you the tools, frameworks, and strategies to get to work right away with no gatekeeping involved. Section knows from experience that AI has massive implications for marketers. Not only do they upskill 15,000 students a month, their own marketing team scored an expert-level AI proficiency when tested. They're excited to bring even more marketers into the AI era, so they're offering an exclusive 20% discount to AMA SF members for their AI for Marketers workshop and the AI crash course. Just go to sectionschool.com and sign up using the code AMASF20. That's AMASF20 to receive a 20% discount on the AI for Marketers workshop and the AI crash course. Section: the leading online business school for real people. Education isn't just about what you learn, it's about what you do with it.
Well, and having worked with you closely and getting to know you, for a while now, I really appreciate it. You've got very good instincts when it comes to this stuff, and you didn't have to get your English degree.
Thank you.
I spent a good part of my life obsessing over words and how you manipulate the brains of prospects to get them to take a certain action. And I guess one of the resounding things that I go back to, one of the notions I go back to is what keeps that prospect up at night? What are their worries? What are those words, right? If it's, I want to get promoted, I need to save money, I need more efficient, whatever, whatever those keep me up at night issues are about my job that my prospect has in their head, I want to know what those are. And then I want my messaging, my language to speak to those things, right? And it's got to be broader than I need to become more cost efficient, or I need to increase sales, or whatever that may be. Or, I need to increase my team's productivity writing code. It's got to be much nearer, and that has to be well understood. And usually that is. I mean, even in an early stage startup, your closest customers, if you speak to 4 or 5 of them, can usually, you'll get a good sense of this pretty quickly.
Yeah, the concentration of answers starts to converge. Yeah.
So that when they go to your website, the first thing they see is, yes, this company's going to solve my problem, because your headline or whatever is there is the first kind of words they see. And so, usually in the messaging house, just broadly, in an early stage startup, you'll do it for the company. But again, I wouldn't spend a ton of time on that for the company. I just don't, I'm not sure how necessary that is. It really is a product positioning. And I think what I try to do is have 3 pillars, messaging pillars. And these are the 3 things you say. And they're usually driven by features, right? So if we say, tastes great, less filling, these are the 3 product features that support tastes great, less filling. If we say it's better, faster, cheaper, then these are the 3 product features that support better, faster, cheaper. And then I'm big on the rule of 3s. You can't say more than 3 things about your product, because nobody can keep this shit in their head more than 3 things.
Totally.
Right? And
three is a magical number in the universe.
Right.
I can't tell you how probably dumb it sounds to maybe people listening, or they're nodding their heads, because three really is, humans love 3. I always end up writing in 3s. You can try not to, but you end up coming back to it all the time.
Right. Exactly. And then knocking out the personas, right? And, maybe 3 who are going to be the potential prospects, and then mapping those 3 messaging pillars to those 3 personas. Maybe you just have 1 persona, right? It's like, it's the VP of engineering, or, if I sold a lot of QA products and software QA products and platforms in my time. It was always the director of QA or the VP of quality assurance. And I would, and I didn't really need to go beyond that very much. I mean, there were definitely other folks. There were peripheral folks like the CIO, because they would be part of authorizing the purchase. But, just keep those personas very tight. And then, in a nutshell, that's basically what's in there. And you use that as your Bible. And you and I have talked about this many times before. Repeat, 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 repeat. and just stick to those 3 messaging pillars. When you have a new creative come on board, like, you said you're doing a new website, you hand them that messaging document, and there are going to be people writing the copy. If it's not you yourself, and you say, these are the 3 things you say. You say nothing beyond these. You say nothing less than these. These are the 3 things you say over and over and over, everything in your copy. And then same thing with the visuals, right? Everything in your graphics, your videos, everything you do needs to revolve around those 3 messaging pillars. And it just needs to become crystal clear. And that's called over time, that's called building a brand, because, people just, you think Google, you think search, right? You think Apple, I don't know. You think iPhone, I don't know.
I think
communications and media and entertainment.
To me, it's elegance, simplicity, obviously cutting edge technology, but it's like accessible.
Those are the brand attributes, right? But again, for an
true.
early stage startup.
I'm sorry. Yes, maybe I was thinking about Apple brand attributes. I guess what you were saying is, say, for product positioning, you might look at, say, the iPhone as a product in the product line. Okay.
Right.
Okay, well, honestly, I'll slow this down for a second. This is one of the challenging things, right? Even I just now sort of mixed it up. Keeping the branding and the product positioning, they're related but separate, right? And that can be hard because everybody, even within marketing, can sometimes have a slightly different view of this idea of how to build a set of things we say to the outside world to make our stuff look more attractive and persuade them, right?
And my feeling is, again, depending on the stage of the company, but if you're an early stage startup, you got to focus on, we just got to get the website up, we got to get awareness out, we got to generate leads, we got to close sales. So that's why, I think the brand, I don't want to say the brand happens, but the brand comes out of all that other stuff. I would not, if I were in your position, I would not be thinking about or worried about brand. To me, it would be ancillary. I would just be focusing on, these are the 3 things about our product that we want to talk about over and over and over again. And I know these are the 3 things that keep my prospects up at night. These are the problems I'm going to solve for my prospects. And they resonate with them, right? Because we're, what is it? Not incommunicado. We're what's the word? We're compadre. We're simpatico, right?
Simpatico. I'll let you say that sentence again.
Simpatico, right? So
say the sentence from the beginning.
We are simpatico. When you see the messaging on my website or you get an email from me, it's like, these guys understand my problem. I know what I'm saying here is obvious. Everybody knows this. This is not rocket science.
Well, I don't know, Steve. I'm listening to it and I'm going, yeah. But it's also like very engaging because it is very hard. It sounds, this is probably a real challenge in marketing in general, is all this sounds so common sense. And when you explain it, you're like, of course. But I can tell people, and I'm just going to lay it out. I'm very experienced. This is the 6th startup where I'm leading marketing, and I am in the middle of it now, and it gets confusing again. Mm-hmm. So, and you're trying to find your way through it because some of it's a feel. Like, for example, when you talk about, and I love, by the way, I want to underscore this. I wrote a note. I love that you start with not only just the customer, you go outside the company, but you have a way of honing in on what matters to them by starting with their problem statement, is one way of putting it. But like the pain, the aspiration, getting that context, understanding that, and then understanding what we really do well to help them through that, and then the best way we do it, right? And that is really like the key, I think. And I have a built-in, because I've done it so much, I'm always thinking about the customer. At my current startup, we talk about the customer and we're so focused all the time, it's just sort of in the air. Mm-hmm. But, I am, for example, I was doing a quick scrub on a sales deck. The CEO is selling and there's just me as a marketing guy right now. And he has one. So I'm trying to do one. We have a little opportunity to send a quick sales deck to a small group that could be useful. So I'm taking that opportunity to do it myself, to learn. And you know, the truth is he already knows the three things to say, but I'm trying to go and think about it from the beginning to the end because I want to add value, look at it differently. And I want to also
in
just
a year
learn
or two
it.
from now, you got to make that scalable. He doesn't scale. He's one person. They're going to hire a
True.
VP of sales at some point. They're going to hire SDRs. They're going to hire a sales team. And you got to be able to put him in a PowerPoint deck or, you know, as we used to say in the old days at Apple, in a box. You know, we need CEO in a box so that you can scale that. And that's exactly what the messaging and product positioning documents are about, so that somebody can distill that out of his brain and scale it so that the company can scale.
But what's interesting here that a lot of people don't deal with in their careers, unless you go and do crazy irrational stuff like you and I do, joining really early stage companies before they've ever fully defined this, is, you know, if I come into a big company, then there's already like a sense of, you know, it's different, it's complicated, but there's already a core sense of who we are and how we talk about it. And you go look at other people's work and you have these documents, you've had maybe hired external agencies to help you really go through this. Here, what's interesting is, yes, one day I will scale it, but I'm I'm really at the beginning of the journey where the question is like, well, what are we? Who are we? How do we talk about it? So I don't know what to scale yet. And I'm trying to figure, and it's not done. We're going to evolve that over time. And that sounds maybe quite abstract.
And you'll fail a lot, right? At this early stage, I mean, you may spend 6 months saying something that everybody was sure was the thing prospects and customers wanted to hear, and it wasn't. And everybody had good intentions going. And so, at this stage, you fail a lot, right? Just trying to figure out what the fuck are the words that are going to elicit engaging with that prospect so that we can get them to sign a check a few months from now, right?
Right. Well, what I'll say, let me add one thing here, because there is a difference between, I think the major difference, if I think about this kind of work that varies between startup, early stage, and doing it in a much more established company, I'm just going to sort of say it's marketing research as sort of a topic.
Sure.
So I'll just contrast and it's the pace of business and it's how we ship and distribute. All this matters. But when I was still at Electronic Arts on a big video game franchise, we were still a consumer packaged good. Took 2 years to build the product. We were going to ship it to a store in a box. Doing packaging work is very long lead work.
Right.
And we were going through all the steps. And you are going to ship this product once, and you can't recall a bunch of products from the store shelf and bring it back and change it. So my point is, you basically ship it and that's it. And so to de-risk that, you do all this work with focus groups and quantitative research. And so you're front-loading everything because you have to understand that customer and you have to decide on things like positioning and differentiation, how that shows up in a bunch of assets before you ship, before you build a business. In digital, in software, in startups, it's so fast cycle. So I just feel like the marketing research shifted from before shipping to after shipping. Not all of it. Of course, you should be building and beta. You know, there's other, I mean this generally, but from a marketing standpoint, I don't have to get like, I don't know, I'm the hero, the H1, the main positioning statement correct on the website on day one. I can ship a website and then I can try one thing for a while, another thing for another period of time. We can like come up with a big product release that changes it. So then I'm going to tweak that. And I can also A/B it and I can do other things to measure it. So the measurement happens after the fact and it's much more fast cycle and iterative. You still want the feedback, you just get it at a different time and it takes the demands off of perfection when you're doing it this way. But that also messes up this idea of how perfectly do you get the positioning and how do you really know? Mm-hmm. And do you know before you're live or sometime after you're live? And that's a little bit of a, I'm trying not to say head fuck, but
right.
It's a little bit of a head fuck for marketers.
You can do A/B testing, right? Have certain messages come up to certain visitors on the website and other messages come up to other ones to help you refine that and take it through.
But even at a small company, like I'm not going to ship with that, you know, like I'll just look at the analytics and see something and try something else. And you can put on an A/B software package like a Mutiny or something, a solution. Used to be Optimizely was the thing everyone used, but you know what I mean? Like you can do that more easily now, but the truth is I'm probably going to just develop a really good A and I'm going to ship the best A I can. And I'm not going to come out with a B and do a formal test unless it's like so critical. It's the one or two things that really matter for conversion, then maybe. And if I have the solution implemented, right? We're just talking about practicality. That said, I want to go back to this topic of positioning and messaging because regardless of the size, and we've been talking about some of the differences of shortcutting it, kind of doing on the fly as you're doing other things, it sort of just falls out of the work you do. You did a good job of explaining, start with the customer paid an aspiration and move through that. But there are some things in common regardless of the size of the company, small to very mature, that you still go through. And I would say, like, aside from the kinds of information and the things you're developing along the way, how do you feel your way through it? Because at the end of the day, one thing that I think of is, I'm trying to persuade, I'm trying to compel, I'm trying to load people with enough motivation to take the next step. Let's say it's middle of the funnel work, but I want to catch their attention and I want to speak to them in their language. I want them, so how do you think about it emotionally? How do you get a feel for whether something's compelling and it's really speaking to your audience? I realize it can vary by segment as well. So, okay, well, I can take a stab at it. To me, there's some, what's funny about positioning is technically, as you know, it's supposed to be an internal document.
Right.
It's not, and when you scale later on, if there are many groups, if there's a sales team and a creative team and like you said, SDR prospecting team and so on, you hire various vendors.
Because the sales guys need to know what to say. They don't always know what to say. Yeah. Right. You have to embody this messaging in the sales stack. It's like, guys, we've done the research. We talked to 300 customers. If you say these words, here are your email templates, here are your call scripts, you will be way ahead and you're going to learn things that we don't know in marketing. And you got to feed that back to us. And then we iterate. Anyway, I'm sorry to interject that, but my point is those audiences, they're usually starving for, how do I sell this thing? How do I talk about this thing? I don't know anything about this thing. And you can't sit down with, even 10 people and go over it every time. On top of that, when the CEO goes and he's sitting down at a sales meeting with a sales rep, and that sales rep is saying something completely off, right? He's going to get pissed, or she's going to get pissed, because not everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, no. The CEO was part of the process to produce the product positioning document. This is their baby. This is what they do, and we're all on the same page.
I don't mind. What's interesting about that? You have me ruminating on sales and what we can learn from sales and customer conversations. I don't mind if someone goes off script. It's more about, can we learn from it? And if it's just like failing to say the things that we know our customers care about or missing those opportunities, and yes, that's one kind of mistake that isn't awesome. But sometimes, the messaging, like the language, evolves, right? And sometimes we don't know the best things to say. And what's hard in marketing is that I try not to be out of touch with the customer, of course, and then try to generate, say, assets or suggest things or build decks that frankly aren't very useful to the salespeople. And this happens a lot too. Like anyone who's made like a sales deck as sales enablement materials from a marketing position for a salesperson, can imagine, like, salesperson gets a 20 slide deck and then they immediately throw out 17 of the slides,
which is fine. I mean, I think that's fine. You're giving them
and my point is,
material.
My point is, right. And my exactly. But my point also is that, if you're out of touch and you're doing all this work to build things that aren't being used, that's also not good. It's not an efficient use of your time. Mm-hmm. And you usually can add value. Another way to think about this, let me throw this out there and see if this works for you, Steve. Like, if you break it down into 4 steps, which is sort of like, who is the audience? Mm-hmm. And you talked about how to understand them better. and then, put them in context, like a homegrown solution or DIY is something they might be using. There might be kind of a bigger established company that already does something kind of like this, but it's not as specialized as you and you're new. So there's indirect competition. But basically, you know who your customer is, step one, and you put them in context, meaning here are the substitutes or the alternatives or what's in their world they might reach for to solve that problem you think you can solve well. Then it comes down to, and this is a more plain English way of thinking about it perhaps, then it comes down to what's the most compelling and motivating benefit that we can own. And in that is like not only the best argument, but also the one that we have some legitimacy around, right?
Right.
And that's kind of a common sense approach, because sometimes you just work with what you have. And then the other part, the fourth part, I would say is what's the best convincing proof? What's the evidence that we can deliver that proves that we can deliver on that promise? So it's understand the audience, kind of put them in context, figure out the best thing that you offer that you can own. And then it's like, how do you prove it to them? Like, that's another way of thinking about it that's kind of more practical. And I find myself thinking about it kind of like that because of the early stage,
right,
craziness that I deal with. But does that resonate with you? Does that sound like a problem you solve through positioning in a messaging house?
Yes. Because like I said, this stuff is always going to evolve. It's like you said about, you produce the sales deck, and it turns out that, the sales team ends up only using 7 of those. And especially if you've got a lot of verticals, you've got different kinds of audiences, or there may be a customer that is really focused on only one thing. And the sales rep should be sharp enough to know, there's only one slide in this deck that's going to appeal to that, and I got to build out the rest because you've got a customer that's almost bespoke. And that kind of gets into the account-based marketing stuff and producing specific materials for specific customers. But anyway, they really speak to their very narrow set of problems and giving the sales team everything they need to close that deal.
Let me give you another challenge. Like, see if you how you handle this. This happens to me a lot. So one of the hard things I think about it with all this branding stuff, I'll just call it stuff, is ultimately positioning yourself or differentiating yourself is really what I'm thinking about. How are you able to describe yourself as different and better in a compelling way when you're in a crowded market? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes in the startup world, like AI is a big thing, and there's a lot of people, it's kind of gold rushy, so there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people claiming they can do similar things. It becomes very crowded. If you have a potential buyer looking at a few alternatives, they all start sounding the same, right? And it gets really hard for them to figure out, well, which one of these is better or different and why. So how do you deal with trying to, identify and address the needs your specific target audience might have, while trying to keep the brand message, clear and believable and relevant? And this is the tricky part, like, because it's a little bit of a puzzle, while finding that unique sweet spot where your brand stands out and isn't too generic, niche, or sounding like everybody else. Do you know what I mean? It's like something you're good at that matters, that your customers care about, that you do a little bit better or differently than others, that you can kind of hang your hat on. Like, being different on a minor feature that no one cares about is not useful. So then how do you try to sound better or different in a crowded field when arguably you kind of look the same?
Yeah. That's a hard one. I mean, maybe the way I would answer that is you've got to find that one thing. That's probably the completely wrong way to do it because it's kind of a mental masturbation exercise. But what is the one thing that you really feel is powerful, that thrills you about the product, that it's a kind of thing that you just want to share it with the world? It's so cool. We've all gone through this with certain products. Like, Peter, I really, really want you to try this coffee. Steve, I really don't drink coffee. Oh, no. But it's it's so great. And it's got these great, hints of, I don't know, cherry. And it's so awesome. And we've all had those products that you just really want to share with people because they've got this thing about them that excites you, and maybe it doesn't excite them. So maybe the default is to go back and find out what that is. I mean, I think I can maybe shed some light on this or tangentially comment on it. I was working at a robotics company, and it was a big industrial cleaning robot. And you can't imagine anything less sexy than, facilities and maintenance companies and trying to sell them an industrial floor cleaner. It's just that you don't have a person ride on top of it, riding it around the airport terminal or the warehouse.
Right.
It's a robot. It's smart. And, when you get excited about it, and again, this is very geeky, but what got me excited about the product on a product level was that the company was very vertically integrated. So it didn't, manufacture the robot itself, but it designed it from the hardware to the firmware to the operating system on the robot to the back-end systems that drove it, because it was all cloud connected. And this vertical integration led to just a superior product and a superior experience compared to the competition. The analogy I would use is that the other guys are building Frankenstein monsters because they would take basically a ride-on cleaner and attach other gear and their board and stuff to it. And I would say, whereas we're giving birth to an organic baby, because the whole thing was designed from, again, everything. You went onto the portal and you could see everything about the robot. You could see the cameras, so you could be in the airport as it was cleaning, all the instrumentation on it. It was just all extremely tightly integrated. And that was just cool. So that's something we talked about. And I think if you went to somebody and said, oh, do you want, a facilities manager at, let's say, a large hospital or a warehouse network at whatever, Amazon or whatever, and say, do you really care if this thing is a tightly knit product between hardware, software, and services, and is very elegant in its design? That say, I don't give a shit about that. I want to know, is it going to clean it or blah, 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 blah. But it was so cool that we talked about it. And we used it as a way to communicate that our product was more elegant, more advanced. And I felt that gave the company and the product a kind of space age gleam that the other competitors did not have, right? They were this boring, ugly, heavy equipment, and we were this sleek, sexy, beautiful thing that was super high tech. Now, we also talked about the other things that mattered, right? But, to your point about trying to grab the things that stand out, if, you're not really sure what that is, maybe you hold on to the stuff that personally thrills you, and then you can communicate that enthusiasm to the prospect. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I have maybe like a reaction and then a question about it. The reaction is that I do think understanding the total vertical integration and how everything was conceived to work together in a bespoke way, kind of built from the ground up, can then result in a better total experience that others can't copy. So I'm in my head, I'm already thinking,
which
that's
real, by the way. That's very real. Yeah.
No, I'm grokking that. And so, like, as you described that, I start thinking, okay, there's a there's a sustainable competitive advantage, as us fancy MBAs might say. That's going to be hard to copy. There was, call it a design, build, product philosophy to do it this way that then gives you guys a different end user experience, right? So I love that, and I do think that that's real. The question is, so first of all, I think that's super cool, and I think that it's more than you just geeking out about something cool that makes you excited. I think it actually results in certain outcomes and experiences that only you guys could deliver. The question is, like, knowing all that, I'm sort of at the edge of my seat. Let's bring it back to, say, brand, positioning, messaging house, right? How did you then take what you understood about what the customer needs, the context they have, the choices they have, the most impressive, compelling thing about your product that you think is unique, and then turn that into some perceptions and messages you were trying to build with your target customer? Like, what did you actually execute in terms of language, campaign, messaging built around those?
Right.
Things.
It gave us the sheen of being premium. I don't think we didn't charge any more for our solution than our competitors, but
you got more for the same. It was higher quality, right?
Right. And at least on a branding level and a messaging level, we were able to, communicate that and say, you're just going to have a better experience with our vertically integrated stack because we design everything, right? From the software to the firmware to the hardware to the industrial design. And that results in just a better user experience. Now communicating that into translating that into kind of hardcore business benefits was close to impossible. Other than
I don't know.
You know what it was? It was delighting the customer. Remember that old term from
of course,
decades ago? And we would see this all the time. We'd talk to customers, and they just like say, this thing's just great to work with. I just pull it out of its little, it's like they keep it in its little cage. Pull it out,
put it in its kennel.
Yeah,
out of the kennel.
Punch the button. Yep. Taking the little dog out of its doggy crate, putting it in its position in the warehouse, punching the button, and it just goes. And then it gets stuck because there's a piece of, one of the forklifts has left a piece of crap, like a wooden, pallet in the middle of it. And it gets stuck. And they knew that they could go to the iPhone app and, it's 2 a.m. and the facilities manager, they wake him up and he punches a button on his phone and it gets the robot unstuck. And all of that was due to everything I'm describing, right? The fact that it was integrated and that delight, that customer delight that this thing works. And it just, especially after my rebranding, they just looked fucking cool.
That.
Yeah.
I think that matters.
Logo and everything. I mean, it looked very space age, and you looked at the competition; those things were fucking ugly. And
that's funny. Yeah, Well, let me backseat market for a second here. Let me indulge me. I think out of all of this, I'm going to test it out because you worked there, you lived this. Yeah. I'm just some smart ass hearing it for the first time. Yeah. But like what's coming to me is a virtual cockpit. This idea, like, can you take a ride virtually on other similar robots? Can you direct it from, remotely the way you could say with the iPhone app? Like there's some total set of experiences where you can basically like controlling, and this may not be the best analogy, but like controlling a drone, right? You can remote control this thing. You can remotely ride it. You can remotely drive it. You can see what it sees, right? So I like this virtual cockpit idea. Like, you don't have to be there to experience it and help it and check it and all this other stuff. Right. Is there something about that you think you guys could have worked with? I don't know if the customer cared, but you just described a scenario, right? Where it's like 2 a.m.
I'm not sure I can remember, and I'm not sure if those guys would really think about it. The cameras were really there, of course, to keep it from like running over a kid in the mall, right? I mean, that's
sensors, right? Of course.
But you could like we could look in on a specific robot cleaning a mall floor in Hong Kong, right? We could see everything that was going on. And there's a whole nother story there around the robot doing different things other than cleaning, like security, guard duty, that kind of thing. But that's a whole nother story.
What occurs to me, and this is a big part of, what's funny with all this positioning and branding, and maybe I'm thinking about positioning for a product in the moment. A lot of what you're trying to come down to is a 4 or a 5 word or a 6 word statement.
Okay, that's a great transition.
Because you could do all this work, all this documentation,
right.
and then let me give you a motivational example.
Well, you're talking about a tagline.
Yes, but here, let me give you one of the ultimate taglines of all time. Pause live TV, TiVo in its day. TiVo, I visited that company. I talked to people in marketing years ago. There's case studies. But TiVo was an early DVR digital video recorder. We didn't have Netflix with a library where you could watch everything video on demand the way we did, right? And you could record things and then go back and replay it and such. So it was a home recorder of sorts. And they couldn't get people to adopt this. And then you were talking about a cool factor, some kind of cool factor, something that thrilled you. And I wrote this down about 10 minutes ago, but pause live TV. So a lot of it does come down to discovering that ultimate nugget, that really amazing tagline, which makes this sound like derivative work. But how do you get to something that just, how it is, like if it lands, it lands. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking about, Salesforce's early tagline, which was actually, I guess, like this really shitty graphic. It just said no software, or it was like software with the red. Yeah. And that just everything, it was like, no, we're SaaS, right? That's when SaaS was like completely brand new. And, and the whole thing was that you've got this pain point where you buy all these seat licenses and you've got to install it and all this shit on a local network. Like, no, open up the web browser and go. It had very little to do with CRM,
but cloud and you're right. But cloud and software as a service back then, everything was delivered in software and quote unquote on premise. So,
right.
And you're right, on premise is a pain in the ass, and they were a little upstart. And frankly, from a cost efficiency standpoint, much better for them to not have to go on prem. You don't want to be on prem. It's very expensive as a company to serve that.
Yeah.
So there were some survival reasons, and they packaged up what you could have considered honestly as a disadvantage at the time to become an advantage, because now you can, from the server side, update on the fly and all that.
Yeah.
And they can ship and roll back, and they have all kinds of advantages. But they had to break this idea that good software has to be installed securely inside the 4 walls of the company, as it were.
Right.
And yes, that was a great.
And
I don't know if that was
a while, for people to get over that. But to get back to your point about the messaging and I just thinking of what you're having to go through at your current job to get, what is that thing? I just think for a small company that's just getting this together, forming those initial messaging pillars, but then just repeating it,
yeah,
and being able to take those and, like you said, reduce it down to that one thing, right? The TiVo example is great, although it's kind of a consumer example. You can go back, although this is very much a branding thing on a corporate level, but Apple's whole Think Different campaign was like Think Different. It's like, it was a non-technology message, because it's like everybody had a PC, every PC had a browser. So how does Apple differentiate itself? So it's kind of like a lifestyle, think different, come buy an Apple computer and don't be like everybody else. I don't know. What are some other...
It had a lot, but also had a great campaign, like the Crazy Ones campaign behind it, that showed great people in history, Gandhi, MLK, people who made a huge difference, who thought differently.
Right, but they distilled it down, right? To your point.
Well, they distilled it down. Now I will say there is a difference between what I might call a campaign versus, more of the immutable evergreen brand of a company. And I think of that era, as a bit of a campaign, but a major one. And the major difference as well here is that was a big paid media campaign, meaning that was not just think different as, let's say this, it was humongous spending on TV commercials, right?
Yeah.
It was multiple campaigns. It was a whole tent pole. Like,
So it was a consumer branding campaign, which
correct.
is like, again, very different from what a early stage startup faces.
Well, and you still, I guess there's
the
things
point I
in
was
common
trying to make is they distilled it down very well, right? And I'm just thinking of your thing about how do we distill this down, to
right. Well, the other thing, of course, with it, and you haven't mentioned it, I know you know this, it's obvious, but they also grammatically, they did it grammatically incorrect on purpose.
Yeah.
And this was back, I will say, in this era, it was around plus or minus 2000. Language and how we communicate was still much more formal.
Mm-hmm.
So that would stand out more to have that purposeful grammatical mistake of think different, because it's an adverb, so it should be think differently.
Mm-hmm.
Today, of course, with this, not a complaint, it's just an observation in how we think about and accept language. But with text messaging and, and messaging in general, and social, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and so on, we are much more accepting of colloquial, grammatically incorrect, all lowercase, no punctuation, and so on. And again, it's not a complaint. It's just that think different may not work today because it would not have stood out the same way. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, just like a campaign, the anti-software, it's an interesting case where you pick a villain that no one cares about and you go after them. Like, no one's going to stand up for the on-prem, and so, so that's the no more software, if you will. So it's an interesting position to take against not a specific competitor, right? And I like that as well. I'll tell you, here's where my head's at. I'll give people a little window into, like, literally, I spent yesterday, I probably generated between myself and ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is good for brainstorming, but I'll tell you folks, it's not great for coming up with really good language in the end, but it helped. I probably generated a good quality 40 to 50, but over 100 taglines, if you will, positioning statements. And we have a product that helps experts take care of their customers. And so what we were trying to, one of the insights we had was, well, I wonder what the expert uses. What would they use? Like, would they use our product? And, ours kind of replaces them. We're an agent, an AI agent that helps handle advanced technical support. So there's, in the small context in the support world, there's tier 1, I forgot my password reset. And there's tier 2 and tier 3. And usually an engineering team is getting involved because it's a technical customer with a very technical question that's an edge case. And it's much harder to do that well. And that's what these guys I work with, a bunch of PhDs, do really well. But there's support engineers who already do that job. This will come along and take some of the load off and help. Right. So the analogy I have, and this is where I'm at, sort of the God's honest truth, or however you say it. This is the truth. I was trying to think about, like, an analogy. Where does a Michelin star chef dine out on his night off?
Right? I can't believe you said that. I got a great story to tell you. Keep going.
Well, but it's that type of analogy. Where does a master mechanic take his car to get repaired? That idea. Where would the experts go? So this idea is like, where would a solutions engineer go when that person is actually trying to solve a really hard technical problem, him or herself? Where would they go? And, we think they would use our agent, because our agent, we think, is that good. And so we're trying to think about, like, that's what we're trying to think about. And it's sort of like getting that. It's a clever way to get acceptance. It's a clever way to get the target audience to think about, how do I put myself in the position of my customer that this product would help? And what would I really want if I were in their shoes? And so it's got some clever layering. What is hard about it is there's kind of multiple parties to think about, and trying to distill that down into something that is tight and compelling and clever, and not too wordy. So that's what I was playing around with, and that's born out of having listened to a lot of sales calls, having talked to the CEO a lot, seeing product demos in-house, like it's starting to, I'm building that knowledge base about what our customers' pain is, what their solution is, what the resistance to this type of solution might be for them, what they're trying to get done, on the job. So it started, like, while it sounds like a few words and I have some cute analogies, it is, a result of a lot of inputs, right? And I'm trying to get, and I'm not there, and I'm right in the middle of it, because I need a great H1 on the website. And, and I think there's something there. And I have the advantage, I will say, I was talking about marketing research, is I work for a company where I'm the only non-engineer, the non-software developer, and they are calling on software developers. So I'm lucky that I can do a lot of sniff tests with them. I just say, hey, look at these. And they're like, yeah, no, we would never say that anymore. We don't say that. That's last year, So
I went to the AI in the cloud, and I said, 25 Fortune 500 companies, what are their taglines?
Okay.
And a lot of these are old. It's, the typical thing where AI is kind of out of it. But AT&T, Your World Delivered, that's an old one.
AT&T, yep.
Accenture, High Performance Delivered. Abbott Laboratories, I actually like this one. Abbott Laboratories, they're I think pharmaceutical, right? Life to the fullest. ADT Corp, always there. 3M Corp, Science Applied to Life. This is a great one. Autodesk, Design Your World. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Well, because people don't know, Autodesk makes computer-aided design, which software designers and architects use to really create complicated 3D imagery, like, designing an engine, a set of specifications for how an engine will be built, right? So that's a very interesting one. Let me give you some.
Really quick, though,
yeah,
I like the Advanced Auto Parts, which I've heard of this company. Actually, I think this is a great one. I think it captures something real. We're ready in advance.
Oh, cute. It plays on their name.
Well, it plays on their name, and if you own a car, it's like the fucking thing's going to break down, and these guys they're ahead, right? They're ready already. They're here to help you. That's a great brand message.
Well,
anyway.
The ones that I pulled up, here's some that I pulled up, and these are more consumer. Obviously, it started with Nike, just do it.
Brilliant.
Apple, think different, which I don't think that. But we agree that's it's AI, dude.
Very
BMW, this is an interesting one. The ultimate driving machine, right? So they are very much about performance, right?
Yeah.
And that brand, that works because that is a real embodiment of their brand, how their engineers work, the cars and the performance, the experience they deliver. So the other part of this for people, it might be obvious, is you can't just say anything. It has to be true.
Right.
Because it is, we talk about the brand promise. Will you deliver on the promise? You'll claim something, and then someone will experience it, and it needs to line up. You need to deliver on that. So you can't be you can't be Kia. No offense to Kia, they make nice cars, but they can't be the ultimate driving machine. That's not really who they are.
That's not what they do.
Right?
Yeah.
Here's a couple more. This one I'm going to call out because I think it's a good example of probably taking what was a disadvantage or a complaint and trying to turn it on its head. But Kentucky Fried Chicken, which went to KFC, now back to Kentucky Fried Chicken, was it's finger licking good.
That's the old one. Isn't the new one, We Do Chicken Right? Isn't that the new one?
Oh, yes. Might be. Oh, no. Is that Popeyes, my friend?
I don't know. Yeah. Finger Licking Good. That was like, that's really old, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, no. You know what? We Do Chicken Right is actually old. That was from 81 to 91, according to the internet.
Okay.
But Finger Licking Good it's been around. Yeah, I know. Finger Licking Good, what is interesting is I can imagine that people were like, oh, compared to a hot dog or a hamburger, fast food, my hands get so messy, you know, and now it's probably, and, I don't want to pick something up to
turning that into a positive rather than a negative.
Well, that's what I mean. It was turning on its head. That's so clever. Here, one other that I think is really interesting to consider. Well, two more, because I think this one's quite good. Netflix, which is a current brand everyone knows. See What's Next. Not bad. This is the one. This is hilarious.
This is pretty good. Yeah.
Before I tell you, and again, assuming these are correct, before I tell you what it is, maybe you could guess. And for this one, it's Tesla. Okay. You have to take Elon Musk out of the picture.
Sure.
Forget Elon Musk.
A lot of people there doing great work. Yeah, I get it. He's just one guy.
He's a public figure and comes with his own associations. But my point is, Tesla has been a darling of the electric company industry, of course, and made a very modern, cool car that's actually quite stylish compared to maybe today. It doesn't seem as fresh as it was 10 years ago, but I can tell you, at least being in the Bay Area, the love for Tesla's unreal. Now, what do you think is a good tagline? This may be unfair because, I'm just asking you, and I can tell you what I see here.
A good tagline?
A good tagline, or at least like directionally, because it might be hard to come up with an actual finalized tagline.
Yeah, well,
what would you focus on?
He's infamous for firing marketing people left and right. Like, he completely got rid of their PR department. There is no... Actually, I was going to bring this up. We need to we very much need to talk about this regard to messaging and branding for a product-focused company like all early-stage startups are. I don't know. Drive into the future.
Oh my God! Did you just look that up? Because I think that you are cheating.
No.
Right here it says drive the future.
Oh,
you're a savant, dude.
That's incredible. It must have been planted in my subconscious someplace.
You are the lifeline I'm calling if I'm one of those game shows, man.
That's right.
That blew me away just now. Honestly,
given it's Musk, it's going to be Who Wants to Be a Billionaire, not a millionaire.
Right.
So getting back to our favorite co-president, and I, he's he's notoriously, he doesn't hate marketing people. He just doesn't hire them because he's got this very strong philosophy, which is also very Steve Jobsian and Apple-esque, is that if you got a great product, your marketing is word of mouth. And that's the only marketing you need. And this is why he has just infamously not hired a real marketing team ever at Tesla. Now, all the people at Tesla who hear this, who are in marketing, I'm sure they're going to start saying all kinds of nasty things about me on social media. But if you're very product focused and you're making a great product and everything's about that, then your brand is simply what people say about you when you're not in the room. That is your brand. And, going back to Tesla, which again, we understand here in the Bay Area that maybe people in other parts of the country don't get, is that everybody will tell you that this is just like one of the best products they've ever bought in their life. They never knew that driving a car could be actually a thrill.
Well, let me challenge you. Let me challenge you a little bit, because let's say he's infamously rough on marketing people. You could still argue, though, the school of thought that says, marketing or brand, really, let's talk about brand and forget who works on the brand explicitly for a second. Brand is really like, the associations you're building with, your audience, your customer over time. And it's, made up of all the touch points, right? So if you take some of their things in isolation, the name Tesla, and, that it maps back to Nikola Tesla, right? An inventor, a scientist who discovered, or was among the pioneers to help discover electricity. That's a great name. Like, that already is strong. The logo, the identity is actually quite good. Maybe it's not the head of marketing per se that does it, but they got some of the foundational things right, like the name and kind of an association inference of the brand story, if you will, with Tesla electric combination, and then I'd say, like, and this is not marketing that a lot of people deal with, but the on-premise marketing, when you go into a Tesla store, and there are more over here maybe than throughout the country, but right. Impeccably designed, and again, a very nice experience. And then of course you have a lot of interesting fun factors with the car. That you can make the car. It's software driven, right? So you can, no pun intended, but meaning like you can make the car make all kinds of funny noises. Like right. There's a funny you have it like you have a Tesla, Steve. You drive a Tesla, so you could tell us about it. But like one of the things that's kind of funny is you can make the car in the backseat make a fart noise. And kind of goof around with your passengers. So which is silly. Like, who would ever decide to do that? So,
Right.
do you feel, though, when you interact with the product, that there are these touch points, and maybe you could call them brand experiences, that you get by driving a Tesla?
Like, for example, having a blind spot, right? When you're changing lanes, the thing that's most nerve-wracking is that there's a blind spot. You got to turn your head. I know this sounds like first world problems, but they're little tension points that make driving shitty. On a Tesla, when you do your turn signal left, the camera on the left of the car comes up on the screen, and you can see whether there's a car in your blind spot or not. So that's just one example of a million little things in this product that they just shave away to make the experience of getting from point A to point B better. And, this kind of gets back to driving the future. I mean, you feel like you're in a fucking science fiction movie when you get in this car and drive it.
There's a bunch of, yes, and I think...
And then you get into your old ice car, like we get into our beat-up old minivan, which I love. It's a family member at this point because we've got so many great family memories, camping, and it's just... Anyway, I will never get rid of this fucking Beat or Toyota but you just feel like you're stepping into a horse and buggy in the 19th century. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So I don't know if I've answered your question, but this gets back to the brand promise.
Tesla has always, from a supply and demand standpoint, is always been oversubscribed. Like, there's a long wait list to get a Tesla. However, if you think about what it takes to craft a good brand and sort of the ethos that goes into it, that idea of drive the future and all the elements and the experience they deliver, you could argue that despite not having a stable marketing leader or group, they still check the boxes of something that delivers a total brand experience that I think would be the envy of others. It is built on a differentiated product with a lot of different advantages. I mean, of course, the thing that gets you that they've tried to deal with is the range, right? And so a lot of the innovation and unlocking longer range driving, for example, is based around battery. But it is interesting, like, you could still argue that they did a good job with branding and building brand identity and all that stuff.
Well, and this gets back to, we can bring it around here and hopefully wrap this up. This gets around to what is that essential brand experience around the product, and, and then how do you instantiate that in the messaging, in the words, in the three messaging pillars for the product? And it may be expertise. I mean, this seems like a great, I love that word, and it seems like it would work somewhere, in what you're doing. Maybe the other one is, your buddy, your pal. This goes back to all the AI not destroying jobs, but helping humans do their jobs better. So you've got a pal who's an expert, just like you are for me with marketing. I come to you with all my marketing questions. And then, I don't know, a third thing is, cost savings or efficiency or whatever that is. And then that all comes out of the product, though, right? Just like the future comes out of, you drive a Tesla. Yes, I feel like I'm in the future.
It all makes it, funnily enough, it makes the Cybertruck, which is pretty polarizing, make more sense. Because really it went from, it's kind of like a moon landing buggy or whatever, It's like it looks weirdly futuristic and boxy and angular, and some people like it. A lot of people don't like it. It's so different than their very curvy, sleek design. It's such a departure. But if you think about it as, quote unquote, driving the future, and you imagine it almost like a moon buggy or something you drive on Mars, and maybe that appeals to some people, but it has a little bit of that look, and I think some people, it like taps into that idea of what the future could look like, because it has a futuristic feel. And it actually makes more sense when you think about it in terms of the brand. love it or hate it.
Well, I think, again, this is a brilliant point. It's not about a goofy design that's going to be provocative. It's about expressing the brand. I think you make a great point. So again, let's get back to the premise of this episode. The messaging and the visual identity expresses the brand. And the brand goes back to those brand attributes. We haven't talked about brand attributes much, but everything grows out of that. And so you sit there and say, okay, I just want one of those F-150 Lightnings, because that's what I'm used to. It looks like a normal truck, or even like a Rivian. It looks like a normal truck. And maybe the high order bit, as our buddy Steve Jobs used to say, it's not that it looks like a normal truck, but that it's an expression of the brand. And if you just focus on expressing the brand, that's how you win.
Yeah,
how's
that's
that
interesting.
Pontification?
I love it.
It's probably complete horse shit that's not going to sell one piece of software, but
well, no, I think you need to define the brand, and the brand has to be defined based on the product and what it delivers in the experience or the set of products. So it's all tied together. But I think with that, I think that's a good place to stop. I like that.
Can I do? I'm going to do a Peter here. Can I say one more thing and then we'll stop?
Yeah, let's do it.
About expressing the brand and these things we've been talking about coming through the product. Every Apple product I buy, opening up the packaging, I don't know what sorcery those motherfuckers impact. Well, actually I do, because back in the old days when I was at Apple, I sat in on packaging focus groups. I assume they've carried on that tradition, where I would watch customers actually open things and get confused or not, open computer boxes. Anyway, there is, it's such an Apple-esque experience opening up an Apple product box. You tear off the little thing, and there's not much anymore. There's not much I mean, it used to mean something when there was a ton of shit in the box. Now there's barely anything, but everything about it just feels premium and
feels premium
through and special. And I'll even go back to this Slack, onboarding with Slack. It was just, that was the brand speaking through the onboarding experience, because it was so elegant, so easy. You enjoyed joining Slack for the first time because they just did it so well, and that's all an expression of the brand. So anyway,
I think that that's a good. I mean, I'll say with Apple, I echo that sentiment, because Apple feels elegant, streamlined, well-designed, thoughtful, and it's a combination of art and origami and the perfect ergonomic experience, and this puzzle of, unwrapping this box, and the weight of the paper and the cardboard they used. Everything is so premium, to your point. And it's not like they did cheap packaging just to put it in a box and get it to you. They thought about it. I mean, even the elements inside of it, there's a kind of an opaque kind of wrapper around it that has a paper feel. I mean, it is a work of art, and that is a very Apple experience. And I still marvel, like when I get an iPhone every couple of years, it's like, honestly, I think about, should I keep this box? Do I keep this box? Look at that. I won't. I'm not even sure if I should throw away the packaging.
Yeah. All right, sir. Good stuff. Well, I think we both got to get going here, get back to our families.
Sir.
So another great session.